The idea that America is the end of the world can be understood in different ways, depending on whether you're talking about political, cultural, environmental, or religious contexts. Here's a deep dive into various interpretations of the phrase. 1. Religious interpretation. Apocalyptic thinking. In religious or spiritual terms, some people might see America as playing a role in the end times or the apocalypse, especially in certain strands of Christian eschatology. The Book of Revelation and other apocalyptic texts have been interpreted by some groups as predicting the downfall of great empires, which they associate with America due to its global influence. Signs of the end times. Moral decline. Some religious commentators argue that America's shift away from traditional Christian values, such as increased secularism, acceptance of LGBTQ rights, or issues like abortion, are signs of moral decay, which they interpret as fulfilling biblical prophecies about the end of the world. Global influence and conflict. America's military and political dominance, particularly its involvement in the Middle East, has led some to claim that it aligns with prophetic scenarios about global conflicts preceding the end of the world. However, this interpretation is not universally accepted. Many Christians and scholars argue against literal readings of these apocalyptic texts, emphasizing symbolic meanings over specific events or nations. 2. Environmental interpretation. Ecological collapse. Another interpretation of America as the end of the world comes from environmental concerns. Some see the United States, with its significant contributions to global carbon emissions and its historically slow governmental response to climate change, as playing a central role in pushing the planet towards ecological catastrophe. Climate change. Overconsumption. America, with a relatively small percentage of the world's population, consumes a large portion of its resources. This unsustainable consumption pattern has contributed to deforestation, air and water pollution, and global warming, which threatens ecosystems and could lead to widespread disaster. Political inaction. Critics argue that America's economic and political leadership has often failed to address the pressing issue of climate change, both domestically and on the international stage. The Trump administration's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement is often cited as an example of this. However, more recent efforts, like the Biden administration's re-engagement with international climate goals, seek to mitigate this perception. If humanity fails to address environmental degradation, some might argue that industrialized nations like America are hastening the end of the world through unsustainable practices. 3. Cultural interpretation. Cultural dominance and decline. In a cultural sense, America has often been viewed as both the pinnacle and decline of Western civilization. As the most influential country of the 20th and 21st centuries, its culture, through Hollywood, social media, technology, and consumerism, has spread globally. Some argue this has had both positive and negative effects. Cultural imperialism. America's cultural exports, music, movies, brands, ideologies, have created a global monoculture, where Western values dominate and erode local traditions, languages, and ways of life. Critics argue that this Americanization could lead to the loss of global diversity, resulting in cultural homogenization. B. Cultural decay. On the other hand, some internal critics of American culture argue that materialism, celebrity worship, and the rise of lowbrow entertainment are symptoms of cultural decay. They fear that America represents a declining civilization, a pattern often seen in great historical empires before their collapse. From this perspective, America's influence could be seen as contributing to a broader cultural decline, potentially signaling a metaphorical end of the world for cultural diversity and richness. 4. Political interpretation. End of American dominance. In geopolitics, America has been the dominant global superpower since the end of World War II. But in recent years, there has been a growing discourse about the decline of American influence and the potential shift in global power to countries like China or India. A. Imperial overreach. Historically, empires that extend their military and economic reach too far often collapse under their own weight. Some political theorists suggest that America could be heading down this path. The military engagements in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other regions, combined with economic challenges, have stretched American resources and influence thin, leading to domestic and international instability. B. Political polarization. America is deeply divided politically, with extreme partisanship threatening the stability of its democratic institutions. Some fear that internal conflict, coupled with rising inequality and social unrest, could lead to a weakening of the nation's global leadership role. While not literally the end of the world, a decline in American hegemony might mark the end of an era, leading to significant geopolitical shifts. 5. Technological and AI interpretation. Artificial apocalypse. Technology and artificial intelligence, AI, are reshaping society at an unprecedented pace. Some view the US, as a leader in technological innovation, as potentially responsible for existential risks related to AI, biotechnology, or other advanced technologies. AI catastrophe. America's Silicon Valley is at the forefront of AI development, raising fears about runaway AI or the misuse of technology. Theories about the potential for AI to either surpass human intelligence or be weaponized have led some to speculate that technological advancement could bring about an artificial end of the world. B. Technological addiction. The rise of social media, driven by American tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, has changed how people interact with one another and society. Some argue that these platforms contribute to mental health crises, spread misinformation, and fragment social cohesion, effects that could ultimately lead to societal breakdown. 6. Philosophical interpretation. The end of the American dream. Lastly, there is the philosophical idea that America represents a kind of end of the world because it symbolizes the breakdown of the ideals it was built on: the American dream, democracy, and individual freedom. The American dream. Many believe that the American dream, the idea that anyone can achieve success through hard work, has been increasingly unattainable for large parts of the population, particularly in the face of rising inequality, stagnant wages, and the weakening of social mobility. The erosion of this dream could symbolize the end of an idealized version of America, leading to a sense of societal collapse. B. End of democracy. America was once seen as the global model of democracy, but recent challenges, such as voter suppression, the January 6th Capitol riots, and questions of election integrity, have caused some to question whether American democracy is in decline. This could be interpreted as the end of the world in the sense that the American experiment in self-governance might fail. Conclusion: whether America represents the end of the world depends on which lens you use to view it. Some interpret America's global influence, whether through politics, culture, or technology, as a catalyst for global crises, including environmental collapse or cultural homogenization. Others may see America's political struggles or moral debates as signs of broader societal decay. However, none of these interpretations are universally accepted or inevitable. They reflect various perspectives on America's place in a rapidly changing world.